So a pretty common question that not only myself but tech people get a lot, just especially since the tech boom and everyone wants to get into it now, is what's the best way to learn this stuff? And depending on the particular sector or specialty they want to go into, they may ask a little more niched questions from that point on. Say if they want to go into cybersecurity, and even from then, they may want to go into risk management or maybe DevSecOps or something like that. If they're more like me, they want to go into IT operations, but even then, you're looking at project slash program management. You may be looking at network engineering or network architecture from there. And even then, that this stuff has overlap with security concepts. It goes on and on, right? Whether you're on the technical side or the business side. So I wanted to make a video that kind of highlights the way that I learned this information and whether or not I think it's a good idea for people to take the same type of path that I took, especially when you look at the argument of credentials versus experience or vice versa. So while you do have a bunch of auxiliary or extra like specialties and topics that you can touch on, databases, security, cloud computing, things like that, you have to understand that everything that you do in tech revolves around networking. Now, that's not to say that everybody in tech is a network specialist. I know people that are in tech and they don't know anything about this stuff. And even then, it depends on what industry. If they're in healthcare, then they're probably definitely not touching this stuff the way I have to keep network concepts in mind for IT operations. So it's a little different there. But everything that we do revolves around networking concepts at the bare minimum. So even with my job, even though it's not technical, I still have to know basic networking concepts when it comes to MAC addresses, IP addresses, how they relate. Why would a device go offline and stop reporting usage data to us when two devices have the same IP address? If they can't send a job, a certain type of job to a certain device, and they don't know what's going on, then, well, are your IP addresses overlapping? If so, then that's the issue there. Different things like that. And it goes a little bit more in depth, but I don't have to go too much further beyond that, right? Everything after that is kind of just extra learning. So when it comes to that, you want to understand the basics of networking. My personal opinion, you should understand the basics of networking, regardless if you're on the technical side of tech or the business or functional side of tech. So the way that I managed to learn this information essentially was trial by fire. And well, not necessarily trial by fire, but basically I tried to go the certification route. And it worked for me, but there are some pros and cons to everything. We'll get more into this later. But the way I did it was I ended up getting a master's in IT management, which I want to say prior to that, I attempted the Security Plus a couple times, the 501, and failed. So I left it alone. After that, I ended up pivoting into um, the AWS cloud computing certifications, which I managed to get the what's it called, the cloud practitioner, AWS cloud practitioner. I was able to get on my first try. That was super easy. I tried the AWS Solutions Architecture first, or Solutions Architect first. I think I failed that once. And that's when I went to Cloud Practitioner, got that, and then I ended up as eventually going back to Solutions Architect Associate with AWS. After I passed that, which was my second or third, I want to say third try. Yeah, I want to say both my Solutions Architect certification and my Security Plus both took me 3 times. Yep. And a key part of that was that I didn't understand networking concepts all the way. Now, from the first time when I took the Security Plus 501 up until the second time, I was able to close some of that gap a bit more because my score, well, actually, no, that's a lie. My score is the exact same between both attempts, which was weird because I thought I had a better understanding of the networking concepts. So eventually, I kept running through my head, looking at simulations, doing labs, all this other stuff to get these concepts and get this information in my head so I knew how this stuff works so I can make the pivot. In addition to that, I eventually got my master's in IT management, and with that came a certification, the CAPM from PMI, the Certified Associate of Project Management, which I still have that one as well. So I have a bunch of different certs just all over the place. People in tech, I say more times than not, we end up just becoming cert hunters. Some end up doing it as a hobby, which I think I'm one of those guys, though I am taking a break. And then some people, we do it because we have to. Maybe you were already in tech, you didn't have any certifications, but then you hit a glass ceiling for a job, and they say you need a master's and or a cert in order to do this project or to move up. And that's when you start doing it. So everyone's a little different there. Now, when it comes to the way I did it and do I recommend it, it's a matter of personal preference. Most people, especially like the so say prodigies as I call them, like people who've been doing this since they were toddlers or maybe even preteens, and they just stuck with it, and now they're 30, 40, 50 something, and they just know so much stuff like the back of their hand. They're probably higher up the food chain than your average person at their age, right? Most of those people are going to say experience is the ultimate thing that matters. Now, I've also come across a good amount of people who got even just the Security Plus, like their first tech related certification ever, and they managed to make the pivot, get whatever job they are open to learn. Like they don't have to come in with any concrete experience. They just had to be willing to learn, making high five figs, if not six figs out the gate, and they have the room to just learn and grow over time, right? I've also seen people kind of essentially do that where they didn't even have any degrees. They probably had a high school diploma. They don't have any degrees. They were doing a job that was completely unrelated to tech, and then they ended up pivoting into security, something security related or something networking related, right? And they've moved up fairly quickly from that time, and their skills have only further improved. So it's a matter of preference whether or not you want to just go for it and do labs and all this other stuff and then try to sell yourself in the market, or if you want to get a credential or maybe a few credentials that help you stand out. But then some people may feel like you don't have the actual experience to actually like back this stuff up. Like you know all these terminologies, but you don't know how they relate to one another. You haven't actually engineered or architected a network. You don't know the key parts of a network. You don't even know what networking is as a basic concept. You knew it enough to pass the exam, but if someone was to ask you just off the top of your head, you're not even able to paraphrase it in your own words in a way that's actually accurate to what it is. So that's where, you know, you have some of those pros and cons, and therefore people think differently about it. But I just don't see a reason to make it very just stiff. You know, everyone's journey is different. Like I said, I know people on both sides. My mentor, he's more of the former, where he had a Cisco certification growing up, so he was able to get into networking and tech pretty early, and he's still in it, and you know is doing very well. But then you got other people, like I said, I've met directly and indirectly. They get the credentials, and then they can make that pivot, right? So everyone's journey is a little different. Now, in relation to my journey and how I finally managed to make the pivot and get into IT operations, which both my schooling as well as my certifications, I think, are a little bit closer to that. My thing is, it's fine. You do pick up a lot of information along the way, especially if you try to tackle the Security Plus first, because it's going to assume you know networking concepts already. So if you don't understand certain terminology, don't glaze over it. Like you're gonna have to Google it, maybe look at a Network Plus book or something, watch a YouTube video to get that concept down. So while you may have holes missing, you will be able and you'll be inclined to go back and do some additional research to fill those gaps or just to get the information that's needed at that point in time, right? So you will pick up information about networking. You will pick up information about the OSI model. You will pick up information about databases, primarily relational databases, right? And then if you decide to go cloud computing, you'll take all those concepts and you'll still have to apply all those concepts in the cloud environment, just in how that particular company has shaped it in their respective platform, right? So you're going to learn this stuff, and depending on your schedule and how fast and how hard you push yourself, you may get it fairly quickly. I know people that manage to do it. It's very unlikely, but people that have been able to do it and make a 180 in as quick as 6 months. For some, I would say more so with me, both between credentials and work experience, it took me a couple of years, but now I'm doing okay in terms of finding a job. I found a job that I liked. I think I want to stick with it for a long term, and we'll see, you know, where I pivot to after this, right? Because I don't want to get comfortable. I still want to learn as much as I can because this stuff is just, it's a lot, which can be overwhelming, but that's also what makes it super fun. Now, the thing with the way that I went about things with the certifications and going back 3 times for the Security Plus, for the AWS Solutions Architect Associate, Cloud Practitioner wasn't bad. I got that on the first try. But the thing with the way I did that, you run the risk of leaving a lot of money on the table or throwing a lot of money down the drain. That's how it can be perceived, especially for the Security Plus. Believe it or not, the Security Plus is far more expensive than the AWS certifications, or at least the one that I went after. The one I went after, I think, was only a little over $100. I'm pretty sure it wasn't even at least 200. For the Security Plus, for one voucher, you're looking at over $300, right? So just imagine I failed twice, and then I went back for a third time when the Security Plus 601 was announced and it was out, and I studied again, and I was able to get it. And I still had to pay the same price, if not a higher price by this time, because inflation was in effect. So I honestly don't remember. But you're leaving a lot of money on the table when you do that. But because of that, that can also be a motivator to push you to be like, hey, I can't afford to waste XYZ money. $1,000, whatever the case is, I need to get this. So you're more likely to push yourself to get these concepts down in record time, right? So I think it has its pros in that you will learn this stuff fairly quickly, relatively quickly, even if it's only a couple years. You can become very diverse in the lingo as well as an experience in 2 or 3 years. When you take in consideration both credentials and job experience, when you finally make the pivot and you finally land your first tech position. But then look at how much money that you left in the wake, depending on how many times it took you to get those credentials. Now, if you're anything like me and you have a similar mindset to me, my whole thing was I'll make this money back when I finally make this pivot and I finally get into a position that I like, but also is very lucrative, right? And that's fine. That's how investments work. Like you put money into something at face value, it seems like a loss, but then when the rewards come back, it's like it took care of itself. So that's just the way I looked at it. But like I said, there are people who are able to dodge that financial bullet altogether, and they just stick to experience, do labs, or they were just a prodigy. They knew what they wanted to do from the time they were 10 years old. They were Tony Stark, and they were able to do that, and they're super successful in it. And credentials became more secondary as requirements as they progressed and matriculated in their career. So teach his own, but if you want to go my way, the way I did it, I don't think it's the worst way in the world to go, but definitely buckle down on your information. If you want to try to pivot without getting those credentials, save the money, but then you'll be able to speak more to your actual experience, which definitely helps. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You'll just have to learn how to sell yourself in the market while maybe making it known that you don't have formal experience. And if you claim that you do, well, then basically I hope you're a finesser, because some places when it comes to tech work are a little stingier than others when it comes to bringing in people that are a clean slate, and you just need to be willing to learn versus, yeah, no, for this entry level position, you need to already have like 5 years of experience. And there are some places that actually stick to that. It's very weird. So, yeah, guys, go ahead and do what you want. I hope this was helpful for you. That's my path. That's how I did things. I think it's up to you and what suits you. Not everyone discovers everything super young, but also some of us are just more academic when it comes to these type of things. So ultimately, do what suits you and you'll be okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave this video here, guys. If you have any feedback for me, go ahead and share that with me in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.